I'm going to share a personal story about how credit scores can personally impact your life. I'm Elliot Apple, founder and financial planner of Kindness Financial Planning, and today we're going to talk all about credit scores. Now, stick with me here. I'm not going to get into the weeds about what goes into your credit score, but I am going to talk about a personal story recently that my wife and I had through buying a house. And when we were initially searching for a house, rates were bouncing around quite a bit, somewhere between 6.5% to even up to 7.5% at times. And we finally settled on a house, but we had pulled our credit score earlier in the process because we were looking for a few months. And that initial pull, when they ran our credit, had run out. So now we were under contract for a house and we had set the closing date too far out. Usually when they do an initial credit pull, it's good for about 90 days or so. And so unfortunately, we needed to pull our credit score again. Now, when we did this originally, we both had really great scores. It qualified us for the best rates and we were feeling pretty good about that. I think we were at 6.875 at the time. And so that's sort of what we had locked in our mind. And now we're partway through the process of closing on this house and they tell us we need to pull the credit scores again. And I was a little concerned because I know when you go and you apply for debt and they pull your credit score, that can ding it. Typically, it's only 5 to 10 points, but it can be more. Now, you probably know where I'm going with this. In our case, it was more. It actually ended up dinging my wife's credit score quite a bit and enough to push us down below where we needed to be. So typically you need a credit score of 780 and above. And so in this situation, it dinged it right below 780, if you can believe it. So it was 779. So we're literally 1 point away from getting the best rate. So I'm pretty frustrated at this point because we missed the credit pull or the number of days that the credit was available for by about 4 days by closing. So if we had just closed 4 days earlier, we would have been okay with the old credit scores. But in this situation, we had to pull the new credit scores and it dinged it below that 780 by 1 point. So we go back to the lender and we say, hey, what can you do for us? Or what are we faced with now? So we have a couple options. One is we can pay $700 and we can keep the same rate. Now that's a certain percentage of the loan amount, but that's one option. And so that's a real world scenario here. So we're off by 1 point and that's going to cost us $700 up front to keep that same rate. Or number two, we can get a rate of 7%. So an eighth of a point or 0.125% higher, which for our mortgage translates to about $30 a month. So here's the real world impact of this. And again, keep in mind, this is one single point for the credit score. Either we're paying a lump sum of $700 to keep the rate, or we pay $30 more a month for the life of the loan, or until we can potentially refinance if that's an option down the road, which is not guaranteed. No one knows where rates are going. So what the lender suggested is doing potentially a rapid rescore. Now this is where things got a little bit interesting. Neither my wife and I have very much debt. She has some student loans. I have a mortgage on a different property. But other than that, we don't carry any car loans. We don't carry any credit card debt. There's nothing else. So there's not a lot of wiggle room for things that we can do to improve our credit score. Now keep in mind, between when we applied originally and they pulled our credit and now, nothing changed with our credit profile. The only thing that changed is we had applied for a loan for a mortgage and we were still trying to get that same mortgage. So that's always something to keep in mind about credit scores and why people are often frustrated by them. You can see in this situation, nothing has changed with our credit mix, but yet we're facing a financial penalty because of this. So in this scenario, they have some sort of tool, and I had never seen this before actually, where they can do some estimation of what actions can you take and what percent probability will it get you up to that score. So in this case, what would raise her credit score 1 point, or in another case, it was a few more points that needed to be raised with a different credit bureau. And there was somewhere between, I think, an 88% to a 93% probability of raising the score by, and this sounds a little strange, but by using her credit card and keeping a balance on it until the statement was produced, it was going to give her a higher probability of getting to this credit score. So the day we spoke with our lender, we went out, we bought something, I think it was gas that day, and we paid it down to a $10 balance because it suggested having a $10 balance on the credit card for the statement to produce. The issue was the prior month, she had paid it all off, so it showed as a zero balance on that statement. So the way the credit scores are calculated, they actually want to show some utilization utilization ratio there, but often less than 10%. So in her case, it was 0%, and that was seen as a bad thing. I know, it sounds counterintuitive, which is why I want to go through this example with you. So we got a $10 balance on that. Now we're going to see if this works. We don't know. Usually you want this to happen as soon as possible, but now we have to wait for a statement to be produced by the credit card company to show that $10 balance. So I don't know how this is going to play out, whether we'll pay the $30 more a month, pay the $700 up front, or whether all of this rigmarole, we'll call it, of putting a $10 balance on the credit card statement, doing a rapid rescore, and then potentially that could boost our credit enough to get us those best rates. We'll see what happens. The story is yet to be told. So I just wanted to go through this real world example to show you how credit can impact you. Even if you're retired and maybe you don't anticipate using credit later on, maybe you want to buy a house later on, maybe you want to get a loan for a car, and that makes more sense even if you have cash for it. There are situations where credit becomes less important as you age, but oftentimes it's still nice to have a good credit profile and a good credit score to have the option if it comes up, if you want to use that debt. So I thought this would be helpful just so you could see the real world impact of what 1 point and how much of a difference that can be in a real world scenario. And this was an interesting one for me just because I hadn't run across something like this, and I thought we would be good guinea pigs to just share with you how that's going. So I hope this was helpful in understanding the real world impacts of credit scores and what can happen. If you liked this, please subscribe to the channel so you can be notified of future videos. Enjoy.